Welcome to episode 22 of the Camera Shake podcast with me, Kersten and Nick Kirby, where we talk about photography, video, cameras, tech, and anything and everything that's got anything to do with creating photos and making videos. And if you're listening to the audio version and our silky smooth voices aren't enough for your eardrums, you can head over to YouTube and watch us there in glorious Technicolor. So today is a little bit different because we're not in the same space today, mainly because I've been suffering from a very like a really annoying cold over the last few days, and it's I'm happy to say it's not COVID-19. So I literally just have a cold. I am, yeah. I am actually sure. I'm sure because my daughter passed it on to me, and she was tested and it was negative, so it's so good. I've never had a temperature, so that's the other thing. So,
well, some might say that doesn't mean you're ill.
You
got flu.
Yeah, that's true. Although I do have a cough, so that I think everybody else would naturally assume that I'm a COVID sufferer, but I'm not. So I'm all right. Yeah, it's just running in our family at the moment. In fact, my two daughters have had it. My wife's just coming down with it. She's just started complaining last night that she was not feeling well. Yeah. And my stepson had a sore throat as well. So,
well, I'm sure you're in trouble for passing it on now.
Well, sharing is caring, as I say.
You see,
but I blame my daughter. So, she was the first one. So yeah. So and that's also why, and of course, for you who listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can't see this, but I am going to be slurping some honey lemon thing throughout the show because.
That doesn't look like a regular glass to me.
No, this is the glass of death.
Oh my!
Yeah. So this is the thing. Like when I'm ill or when I'm sick, I have to drink out of the skeleton cup because clearly being a guy and suffering very severely from manflu, I am always on death's doorstep. So, yeah.
Well, obviously, I saw you on. When did I see you? Monday.
Yeah.
We were Monday, and I'm just starting to feel a slight tickle on the back of my throat as of yesterday.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So, thank you for that.
That's how it starts. Yeah, that's how it starts.
Thank you.
That's honestly how it started.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, on the positive side, as far as colds go, this isn't really the worst cold I've ever had, because I haven't had a temperature or anything. It's actually been all right. Yeah. I felt like a little bit tired and whatever, but I've just kind of pushed through it. So I've been working and doing all the stuff that I would have normally done. So I haven't really succumbed to the inviting side of the couch and Netflix.
Well, just be thankful it's nothing worse than a cold, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because that's exactly how I've been thinking. Under normal circumstances, I would have been like, "Oh God, I've got cold," blah blah blah, and I feel like terribly sorry for myself. But of course, under these circumstances, I'm really just glad I didn't catch anything that's worse. Okay. So yeah, which is kind of why I've decided not to take a day out or something. Although, my wife's put it to me that it might be a good idea for me to just stay in bed for a day. But I just kind of thought, what?
Do it.
Because other people
get in bed, put the iPad on, stick Netflix on, and just chill out, man.
Yeah, but then you know what it's like. That sounds like a good idea at the time, but then you're like, all your work starts building up, and then you come back and you're just super stressed out because you're then looking at like a mountain of stuff that you have to do. So
yeah,
I just thought, whatever.
I can understand that, and to be honest with you, when I am feeling unwell, it depends what kind of unwell I'm feeling, but more often than not, I feel better by doing something than just lounging around, laying. But occasionally, sometimes it's the best thing to do. But I think you're probably better off doing something.
I mean, I think
a bit slower.
Yeah. When you're at the point where you have a temperature and you have a fever and and then really it's just time to just like put on the Netflix, and or Disney Plus or something of that nature, and then just kind of hit whatever series and just binge watch it. Talking about binge watching, I just started watching a series with Hilary Swank on Netflix
Seen it.
called. Have you seen it?
Mm.
Cool.
Forgotten what it's called though.
Is it called Away or something?
Away? Arrival?
Or
No,
Awake?
Away. Away. Yeah, I think it's Away.
Yeah, it's good. It's kind of slow moving. Funnily enough, it's sort of we're 4 episodes in, and the action is just
Yeah.
starting to happen. So it's a really long, slow build up, and now we're at the point where one of the guys has just come down with this virus.
Yeah, it does
Yeah,
start to move now. I have watched all of
yeah,
it, and it does start to move over the next few episodes quite significantly
yeah,
in comparison to the first sort of 2 or 3 or so.
yeah,
But it's good. I really enjoyed it. I pretty much binged the whole lot in a couple of days, I think, if I remember
yeah.
rightly. I've been trying to place him for ever since I watched it, and I've not looked it up because it's been bugging me, and I want to remember, and I can't place that actor in what I've seen in him before.
Same exact thing.
It's
Exactly
really
what I
odd.
was thinking last night. Yeah, it's I've definitely come across him before, and it'd be probably totally obvious when somebody tells you.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
feel like
I
it's
can't.
something else sci-fi related,
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Yeah,
but I don't know. Well, if anybody knows, do let us know in the comments because it is bugging the hell out of me.
yeah. It's always weird because they must have shot this like last year or whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, this whole thing about him coming down with the virus, and then they were all like wearing protective gear and stuff, and you kind of think, ooh, okay, that's a little close to reality.
Yeah.
So, but I think you probably pick these things up in retrospect. When you watch like movies
Yeah,
and stuff, you kind of think,
absolutely.
oh, how did they know?
Yeah.
How did they know last year? But yeah, so that's what we're binge watching. We still haven't finished the last season of Schitt's Creek,
Never seen
so
it.
that's another. You really should watch that, man. That is wicked.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things like that I need to actually get around to start watching. Always Sunny in Philadelphia is the other one that I keep getting recommended, and I've never seen.
Yeah. Yeah, Schitt's Creek is good. I mean, obviously it's been on for years, and we were kind of late starters with that. But it's the funniest thing I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
It's really well written, and it's just funny. So, yeah, those were our TV exploits.
Nice.
This week.
Good choice. I like it.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, we've been really busy.
Yeah.
Photographing stuff over the weekend and stuff. So
yeah,
been,
we had a few bits going on. Favorite parts of the week was Monday night when I did see you last. Doing some light painting. That was such good fun.
Yeah.
So obviously what we ended up with was fantastic. But why don't you tell everyone what happened at our first location?
So we'd already shot two images at another location nearby, or not too far from your house, actually. And it seemed to be like the perfect location. It was like a really modern but classic style architecture sort of building. It's actually a museum, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, technically it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it looked really cool. It's a really great backdrop, and it was lit quite well, and so it just works as a backdrop for any kind of car. And so we did a few weeks ago. We did a test shoot there with your car, and then we shot the week before last. We shot a Ford Fiesta RS.
Yeah,
which is like the weirdest. Isn't it the weirdest machine? It's like a Ford Fiesta, like which is a tiny car, with a 330 horsepower engine
something like that
put in it.
Yeah, it goes some. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. I mean, that engine would be extremely powerful in any car, but in a car as light as that, it just turned that into a mini rocket. It was just incredible.
Really sought after car that is, and they don't. I don't think they made many of them either.
Well, we didn't drive far in it, but it was like every time you just looked at the accelerator, it just shot forward like a rocket. It was insane. So that was fun. Yeah, so we shot that one, and then we came back for a third image with another car, with a Porsche this time, or Porsche.
Porsche. It's Porsche.
Porsche. Yes, it is. Yeah. And that time we got busted by security.
Mm-hmm.
So that was frustrating.
Yeah. So we were requested to, in a really nice, polite way, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, we were technically on private land, which I'm not sure we realised at first. Had we known, obviously, we would have done something about that in advance.
Yeah.
But we didn't know. They just asked us to move on. What was odd, though, is that they've been watching us on a camera the last couple of times that we've done it and not said a word.
Yeah.
But this time decided enough's enough, I guess, and asked us to move on. So we did, and we found another location.
Well, so I mean, there's two things. First of all, the on the second shoot, we had somebody ask us about what we were doing there, and we explained it. You know, we showed them some of the images that we had taken, and it was all cool. They were very interested in like how we were creating what we were creating there. We had a nice chat. Everything was cool. You know, they let us go about our business, and everything was fine. No problem. Nobody told us to leave or anything like that. It was all very friendly. You know, no problem at all. And then on Monday night, it was like, you've been told you've been told to kind of go away last time. We're like, no, we weren't. Quite the opposite, actually. We had a nice chat with somebody. Everything was fine. Everybody was happy. You know, no problem. You know, to say that we were on private property. Also, I mean, first of all, that wasn't obvious at all, because it was actually a public highway. I mean, first of all, and then I can see. I mean, probably where the car was parked, you could kind of argue that would have maybe. You could kind of say, okay, well, that was a little bit off of the main road. It was by the side of the road. Maybe that's part of the private property. I don't know. Maybe the college owns the road. Who knows? Yeah. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just, it wasn't obvious.
No.
And although the security guy was also very friendly, it wasn't, you know. And I think, you know, the thing there is, and I've heard this actually quite often. I hear this is when, you know, people have altercations with security guards, especially in London. London is one of these places where it's not difficult to get into scrapes with security, because in London, a lot of the time you actually very often on private property, especially in front of not public, but in front of like you know, one of the famous kind of landmarks. You know, if you're in front of the Shard, for example, or in the business district or something like that, it's really you most of the time you're actually on private property, although it wouldn't look like that at all. Yeah. You might reasonably think you're actually on a public highway, but you're not. And you wouldn't believe how quickly you've got security on your back. You know, and that's actually, to be honest, that's partially, it was one of the reasons why I originally bought the Fuji X100F, is because you kind of describe it as being a professional body crammed into, or a professional camera in terms of, you know, image quality and the rest of it, crammed into a body that looks like a compact camera.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to say, I've never had any, I mean, even in places where previously it was kind of dicey, because you rock up with a big camera body and a big lens, and then you immediately look like, you know, a professional photographer, even if you don't have a tripod. If you have a tripod, that's a dead giveaway, you're out. You know, but even if you just rock up with, you know, a big black professional looking camera, you're immediately deemed to be a professional photographer, and therefore you're doing something for money, and therefore you're not supposed to be there.
Yeah,
sort of a thing, you know. And then you're being asked to move along, or in extreme cases, you know, you're being asked to either surrender your SD cards, which is like totally unreasonable.
No way.
Or to delete the images straight on the camera, you know. So I've heard all of these things. Sometimes I find it a little bit worrying when you hear people talk about this, like other photographers, and they kind of go, oh yeah, and this, you know, massive argument or punch up or whatever with the security guy, and you kind of think, really, why did it? I mean, how did it come to that in the first place? Like, surely, you know, because my attitude has always been like, if you've been asked to move on by security, there really is no point arguing. You can reasonably ask why and what the justification is, and you know, and that's fine, because everybody deserves an explanation and everything. But ultimately, you know, I think if you then start an argument, and and things get out of hand or whatever, that's not only, you know, bad for you at that moment, and it could end you. You could end up in like serious trouble with the law potentially.
And
But it's also
what
it
security
ruins
guard has
everything.
ever backtracked on asking you to move on?
Probably none,
right?
ever.
So there's no point even arguing it. You should understand
No.
why and where those boundaries are.
Yeah.
You know, if the boundary is another 50 foot that way, then all right, we'll go 50 foot over there.
Yeah, and it is not. It's not easily identifiable, especially when you're in London. Like when you're in, you know, near Canary Wharf or something, you have no idea that you're not on public turf. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to see. So, and there's some buildings even where, you know, you're not allowed to take pictures because they're for some reason protected or blah blah blah, whatever. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of legal ins and outs. But the point I'm making is that, you know, when you as a photographer, and you might even be well within your rights to be in a certain place, but at that moment, if you start getting aggressive or you start an argument, then you really also ruin it. You're ruining it for everybody else too.
Exactly.
So then photographers in general, you know, get a bad reputation. And actually, the vast majority of people who would take pictures of Canary Wharf, and they're probably tourists anyway, right? I mean, there's no financial interest in it or anything like that.
No.
You know, monetary interest is just a lot of times it's all just a bunch of nonsense. Or like, you know, the people who are maybe members of a camera club and they want to take some cool pictures for a competition or something like that. But there's you know, nobody's really earning money. The smallest number of people would actually be benefiting financially from anything like that. So most of the time it's all just nonsense. But my point is, yeah. So if you're being asked to move on, then it's probably a good idea to just find a different angle.
Exactly right.
Not start an argument.
Totally agree. So, you know, we actually technically ended up on private land on Monday night afterwards, but it was land I'm allowed on, thankfully.
Yeah, well, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, exactly. But the shoot was great. I think we learned more doing this car. You know, the Porsche's got, you know, I think what's become quite apparent over the few light painting shoots that we've done now is that it does make there was 3 factors that really are making a huge difference to the outcome. One is how dark it is outside, and whether we still get any daylight whatsoever. 2 is the lines of the car really do make a huge difference on particularly how those reflections are working. And then 3, the color of the car. You're certainly finding in editing, I think, is making a massive difference on reflections and things like that. So they've probably been the 3 challenges, I guess.
Yeah, it really is one of these things where you know, whenever you learn a new technique or you practice a new technique, it's really it literally is a matter of practice. You know, it's just incredible how much of a difference the reflectivity of the paint makes in the car, or the lines of the car. You know, the way the light reflects and everything else. So and of course you get to try out different things. You know, when we do. With this particular technique, you kind of do passes at the car with the light source, and it really depends on how far above the car you are, or what angle you are, or whatever. And so it's just really you develop the ability to even just to already see whilst you're making a pass, you can already see the reflections happening, and you don't even have to wait for the final photo anymore. You know.
Yeah.
And you can already kind of tell, oh, well, that went well, or that's not going to work because there's going to be a massive light streak across the windscreen or whatever. Yeah. So it's definitely a learning experience for sure. You know, and that's the creation part of it. And likewise, the same thing's happening with the editing part of it.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what I really took away from Monday was, you know, when we were for those who aren't aware, we'll specifically to make passes to like different areas of the car, right? And one of the kind of final touches is we do the wheels, right, as kind of separate shots. What really struck me on Monday was that we've typically gone in a circular motion with the light on the wheels, which kind of makes sense to do it that way. Wheels around, kind of feels right to do that. But when you suggested, let's also try a kind of a cross, up, down, left, right, and see what the difference is. It was a marked difference, and it looked better. So on that car, in that situation, it looked better. Yeah. And that was actually a really big takeaway for me. That was.
Yeah, and that was the part of the shot that I actually used in the edit was not the circular one. Yeah. And when you see it on the screen, you compare it. It's like, well, what's the difference like day and night?
Yeah.
And it's just the reflections and the way the light came off of the spokes of the wheel or whatever. That really looked so much better on the kind of horizontal vertical movement.
Yeah, it was just more flattering.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it was. It's probably the best way to describe it. So yeah, so that we didn't do it on that evening, but that kind of thing may pay to try out on other areas of the car as well, just to see what happens. We're typically going over and across, or what depending on what area of the car we're doing. Maybe we'll start try out something like that and see what happens. My point, I think my point really is that don't be afraid to try things out in a slightly different way and just see what happens. What time have you taken to try that? No time at all. However long the shutter's open for, which frustratingly does take a while, but there's nothing lost. Why not try it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many takeaways from these. So far, if you think about it, we've done a number of cars now, and actually, funny enough, we're being offered more cars to shoot as well, which is even better.
To the point where we haven't even edited all of the cars that we've shot, right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely. Yeah.
That what was that car we got offered recently? I can't.
Ford Mustang.
Mustang, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely have to do that.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
And that's again a completely different color.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's really getting interesting with that. Where we're getting to shoot like really interesting cars actually.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and it's like I said, every time we learn something new. But it's because it's such a two-parter. You've got the actual practical part of it, which is lighting the car, working out, lighting the background, and then doing that on location. But then in the edit, for instance, it's all about kind of reducing it down to a manageable number of layers in Photoshop, for example. So let's say typically. Let's say we take between 30 and 40 shots of the car all in, including headlights and everything else. And then, for the first few times I did that, I literally used about 30 layers or something to create the final image. And then sort of over time, I've managed to get rid of the layers that don't really add anything, and so what you end up with is maybe only 12 layers rather than 30 or 40. And those 12 layers are actually the ones that are useful, or not only useful, but those are the ones that look really good to give you everything that you need.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it will make your document so much more workable, because it'll be smaller, it'll be easier to save, it'll just be an easier thing to work with. And it'll be easier to jump back and forth between Photoshop and Lightroom. It's in Photoshop, once you hit it, there's a file limit, there's a file size limit, and once you hit that, it's basically you have to save it in a different format, in a large document format. But then that means that you can't open that in Lightroom because you need to save it as a TIFF, basically. So when you're in Photoshop, in order to open a file, to just save and open it again in Lightroom, it needs to be saved as a TIFF, and there's a file size limit on that, and so. Really sorting out the layers beforehand not only makes the whole editing process more efficient and much quicker, and actually the car is going to look better, but it'll also save you a lot of time and hassle later on when you want to go back into Lightroom to just put on those finishing touches. Because at the moment, the way I'm editing anyway is I do the bulk of the heavy lifting in Photoshop. So all the layering, all the compositing, all that kind of stuff. And then I like to edit the colors and give it just an extra crunch and do the cropping and everything else in Lightroom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite essential to come back into Lightroom afterwards.
Yeah.
With that. And that's really when it really gives it, that just elevates it from being a really cool photo to like something you go, geez, that really jumps out of the picture. That's the thing. So yeah, it's a fun process. And then of course, the other thing is, it's just sort of working out how to reduce the kind of workload, because an edit like that in the beginning, I'll be editing one of these shots for like a few hours, 2-3 hours maybe. And you want to kind of reduce that time so you can make it as efficient as possible, so that you can maybe do it in an hour, for example. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean they're going great guns at the minute. Enjoying doing that, and it's what I love most about it is it's really fun to be out there doing it. It's a fun process. It's exciting when you start seeing it come together, and you're starting to get those shots, and you can see how they're going to work together. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely loving it.
It is really fun. And I'll tell you what, it's really fun. Again, like just from the editing perspective, because you don't really know what you're going to get until you put the photos on your computer and you start editing. And it's just, you still always have this kind of doubt, this kind of worry. You think like, oh, I'm not so sure whether I'm going to be able to pull this one around, or I don't know how that's going to come out, or, and then, do you know what I mean? It's like you always have that kind of that nagging worry in the back of your mind. But then when you see it come together and you kind of go, ooh, okay, that's going to look cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Then it's like, it's this real kind of thrill moment, and it's like it's a bit like thrill seeking in a very strange, nerdy, Photoshop-y kind of a way. But it's super good fun.
Yeah,
putting these together.
So we took so I filmed that session on Monday, and created a 30-second ish. Actually, I probably filming all in all about 50 minutes. I think we were out there. So compress that down into 30 seconds of kind of time lapse, if you like, but it was actually video sped up. 4,000%. I think I sped that up in the end. Worked like a tree.
Oh, did you? Wow. Okay.
It's a beautiful thing.
Sorry.
And so that's on our Facebook page. And so it's worth checking out if anyone wants to see how we actually go about doing one of these shoots. With the final image is on there as well.
Also, facebook.com/Camera Shake podcast. That's really where it's all happening. So if you're listening to this and you happen to know of Facebook or be on Facebook, then join us there. Like us on Facebook. So it's facebook.com/Camera Shake podcast. And join in with the discussion, because we often post something, we ask for people's opinion. It's really great, to hear back from people. And it's a great way for us to kind of communicate with all of you who are listening or watching out there, which would be awesome. So Facebook. No, we haven't quite made it to TikTok yet. So
who knows how long TikTok's been shut down in the US as of Sunday, I think it is, coming up.
Oh, really?
Okay. So in 2 or 3 days. And
forget about TikTok now.
Yeah, so that's, who knows, that could be the end of TikTok.
So if you want to see us film some dances for LinkedIn, join us there.
Wow. Imagine that.
That'd be good.
Love it.
So what's the next thing going to be? If TikTok is, like, Snapchat isn't really happening anymore. TikTok is dead, apparently.
There'll be something else. It'll be a TikTok equivalent made by someone else, no doubt.
Yeah. Do you remember Vine? Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yeah. Wow, you're going back a few years.
I know.
Showing your age there.
Hey, I used to have a MySpace profile.
Yes.
I have,
That still exists. That's a thing still.
I know. I checked it out the other day. I was so tempted to create a MySpace profile again, just for the hell of it.
Oh man!
So you can hang out with the other 3 people on there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's I'm saying this, talking to the tens of listeners that listen to us out there. Especially, I should say, I always mention this, but we're really to find out who that person in Maryville, Tennessee is that listens to the show.
Yes.
Now, please get in touch. Join us on Facebook, or leave a comment on the YouTube video. That's been bugging us like forever. So yeah, whoever that is, resident of Maryville, Tennessee, please make yourself known. That'd be awesome. So be great to talk to some listeners as well. See,
absolutely.
See how they found us. How did anybody find us?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
So talking about Photoshop, did you read about? I mean, they announced it was coming a couple of years ago now, I believe. It's been a long time that this has been talked about, but Adobe are finally going to fully announce in their October show that their AI-driven, their Sensei-driven sky replacement feature in Photoshop is finally ready to go. Can't wait. And I've seen some videos and some shots of it. They've done a bang-up job. They've done a really good job on it.
Like, this is the most ridiculous thing, actually. That I just cannot believe that it literally took, that we're nearly in 2021, and they're announcing to add this feature. I mean,
yeah. Do you know what I think happened? So I know they've taken a long time about it, but in 29, I can't remember the company's name, and that's frustrating me now. But a company will release some other software came out about a year, 18 months ago or so that did this. And I think Adobe would have been ready then to release it. But I suspect because someone else beat them to the punch, they thought, well, okay, let's now make it even better. And I'm willing to bet that what they're coming out with is immense. Do you know what the really cool feature about it is? Is that whatever sky you choose to replace and whatever you put in as your replacement sky, it will automatically adjust the colors for your foreground to match the light that would have been there for a sky like that. That's awesome.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Luminar has been doing this for a long time.
That's the one.
Yeah. So I did a little bit of property photography, and I just did that to help out an estate agent, or a realtor, if you call it that, for those of you listening in North America. And they usually have an in-house photographer, but that person left and they were looking for somebody else. And so in the meantime, whilst they were looking, I did some photo shoots for them. And of course, for their intents and purposes, you really always replace this guy. So if you walk past an estate agent's shop window or whatever, like over here in the UK, you just walk past, there's lots of photos in the shop window. You can look at different properties. All of these properties had the sky replaced, all of them. Because to be quite honest, there aren't enough blue sky type of days in the UK so that you could photograph all of these properties, and all of these photos have blue skies in the background. So
we have 350 days of grey, cloudy, horrible looking skies.
Yeah, that doesn't really make for awesome property photos, does it?
No, not really.
Come by this mansion in Scotland. It looks awful. Yeah. But that's the truth of it, of course. That's really what it looks like over here. So and as part of that, of course, I had to replace the skies. Now I did it in Photoshop with masking and blah blah blah, and it wasn't. I mean, to be brutally honest, it wasn't actually that hard.
No.
It didn't really take that long, especially if you know how to mask properly or whatever. And I have a bank of skies anyway. So this is just for my own amusement. Is what I do whenever I see an awesome looking sky. I take a photo of it, and I'll put them in a folder, aptly entitled Skies. And so I've built up a collection of different skies over the last, 5 or 6 years or something. And so whenever I create a photo, like an outdoors photo or something, and I want to replace the sky, I have a little bank of photos that I can go back to and replace them. And they all, It's like different colors, guys, different types of clouds, no clouds, blah blah. Lots of different stuff. But to have something where you can literally just click a button and it does it all for you, and it does it well enough, then that's a great time saver.
I mean, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's obviously haven't used it yet, but what I have seen in videos, in real time, is that it does it really well. And do you know what else is cool about it? Is it's non-destructive and it creates all the layers for you, so you can actually go in and quickly adjust whatever you need to, which is just a nice little touch. They could have done away with that, but they haven't. And that's a nice little bonus.
The key with those kind of things is always to see how it handles things like trees. So if you have like sky kind of like behind trees, and you've got a little bit of sky coming through through the trees and stuff, those are going to be the tricky ones. And depending on what the focal length is and the edges aren't sharp, then that's really where you'll see whether it does a good job. Because if you have a straight line like a roof or something, it doesn't really take that much to make that look realistic. But once you have like hedges or trees or whatever, then
I don't recall seeing any examples with trees or hedges or something like that. But one part one shot that I did see was it was a photo of the what was it? It was the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, and on the top of that, you think it's a straight line across. It's not. It's got loads of little kind of uprights going, and in this particular photo, they're quite blurred, right, and all very close together. But it managed to still do the sky in a really how you would expect it to be done. And actually, manually doing that would have been an absolute pain. Yeah. It's cool. It looks like it's going to work really well. And then you've got if it doesn't do one part quite right, you've got all the layers there to quickly go and adjust. It takes
if it creates the mask for you, then you can you go in manually and just fix it. That's cool.
Awesome.
That's great. I mean, I just can't believe it's taken this long for it to become. I mean, given all the other things that you can do with Photoshop.
Yeah.
We have a special guest on the show tonight. Please welcome Solo the dog barking in the background.
Yeah, I'm guessing the postman's walked by.
Cool. Photoshop. There you go. Well, the magic's happening.
Looking forward to it. They're going to talk through it some more in some point in October, which means I guess it's going to be released shortly after that.
Do you know if it comes with a bank of fake skies?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah, and obviously easy enough to add your own and whatnot.
Yeah.
Enables you to zoom in and on your sky and then shift the sky around and with relative ease. It does everything you would expect it to do. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing I've learned. And this is an easy mistake to make, I think, as a photographer, is when you replace the sky. Is that when you photograph a sky, what you often do is you just point your camera up and you just take a picture, and then the clouds appear in the way that they appear, right? But of course, when you're let's say you're looking at something in the distance and the sky, you see the sky behind it, you're really looking at the clouds from a different angle.
Yeah.
They don't look like the clouds right on top of you. So if you then replace that sky with a shot that you've taken at a slightly different angle, then it starts to look unrealistic.
Looks off.
So it's off, yeah. And very often you can't really put your finger on it necessarily immediately, but you kind of think it just doesn't look real. Yeah. Sorry, the other thing is that, this is another very common mistake, is that you see images where that were taken at a particular focal length, and maybe you can see the sort of the sharpness of it, or the depth of field, kind of falling off towards the distance. So the objects in the in the distance are smoother, or not quite as sharp as the objects in the midground and the foreground. But then when they replace the sky is tack sharp, and you kind of go, that doesn't. And then of course that's blatantly obvious. So it's really important to work with like blur filters or something to blur the sky just the right amount, so that it actually looks like it would look had it been there in the first place. So that's how like little. I mean, they're really no-brainers when you really think about it.
Yeah. They're easy to forget if you haven't done it a lot, or you're just learning to do it. very easy to forget. But it's like once you've been shown, or you talk about it again, or whatever it might be, you go, of course, of course. And as soon as you see it in practice, it just looks infinitely better.
Exactly. And sky replacement is such a common technique as well. I mean, it's it's used, we mentioned it earlier, it's used in property photography, but it's used in landscape photography. It's used in like so many different scenarios. It's a very typical, because the one thing you can't control is the weather, when you're out shooting something. And you can have the best location and, when you turn up on a given day at a given time and the weather is crap or the sky looks horrible, then you can't, very often you can't just, if you just flown to the Caribbean to take some photos of an awesome beach, and then there's some annoying, I don't know, clouds in the sky, then, you're going to be able to fix that somehow. So
here's a question for you. When you do come across a sky that you like and you think, oh, that's a cool sky, I'm going to take a photo of that. Do you do a few different perspectives of that sky? So like you were just talking about, if you're taking a shot pretty much head on, and your sky's maybe starting halfway through the frame and back, whatever it might be.
You're
taking an angle like that, you kind of then perhaps doing slightly
I take it. Yeah, exactly. I take a few shots. I also take a few shots with where I may even still have a little bit of the foreground in it. So you can see, I don't know, the skyline or the roofs or trees or whatever, because the reality is you're never really gonna, the sky is never going to make up 100% of your image. There's always going to be something in the bottom half, isn't it? Or like in the bottom third of it or whatever. So when you shoot the sky, that's the part that you don't really need. So you might as well take a shot that's more or less straight ahead with about 2/3 of sky and 1/3 of whatever, because that may potentially be plenty to replace a sky in another photo, where you might not necessarily need that much. So, it's totally worth doing. And of course, that's going to be the perfect perspective when you're replacing a sky that's shot in that way, So, so I do a lot of different ones. I also do different exposures. That's another thing that's good. And then because often I have the Fuji with me, and the Fuji has a built-in ND filter, so I do some with the ND filter and some without, and then that gives me just a few options. And I might come, I don't know, if it's a really cool sky, I might come away with like, let's say 12 pictures or something.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And then and every time you move the camera, of course, the clouds are in a slightly different position, and it just gives you some options then later on when you're trying to find this guy, because very often it's a matter of, you look at an image and you kind of go, okay, I think I'm going to replace the sky, but then you sort of go through I have my little folder or my little library of sky replacement skies, and you just go through it and you kind of go, oh, maybe this could work, or maybe that could work, or there's different degrees of orange. That's the other thing. So you think of the scene, you kind of think, okay, could it work? Sometimes you want to match the time of day, because the light is in a way where you could match it quite well. And other times you might actually want to change the time of day in a way. You have a sky that's got a lot of orangey kind of colors in it, and you might think, oh, actually, if I change my base image to make it look like it was taken at that time of day, it might actually look better. So I did that with a shoot where I shot it was a model shoot with an old Chevrolet pickup truck from the 40s. And there were two portraits I did. One was a portrait of the truck itself with a model on the hood and the owner standing right next to it. And then the other one was an interior shot where both people are in the car, and it's and you can see through the side window and the windscreen. And so there were all full sky replacements in there, because actually the shoot took place in a wooded area outside of a place called Bedford, and it was a pretty drab day. Like, it was like gray, and it wasn't raining, but it was about to, sort of thing, and since the whole scene was artificially lit, then replacing the sky and making it look like there were colors in the sky and stuff, it really gave that image, it really made that image, because it really brought some color into that. that's worked out really well. And the skies I use for that, it's funny because there's a couple of skies I use a lot because I just love them. There's some skies I shot at Lake Tahoe in Northern California a few years ago when I was there with my wife, and some skies that we shot in Canada that work really well, and some we shot in the Nevada desert, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so it was just like, this is a typical thing. Like you're just driving on the highway, and it's getting like later in the day, and all of a sudden, the sky starts to look a certain way. We just stop, take some pictures of the sky, and then carry on. It takes like a minute, and because of cool skies, and you use, years from then. Again, I've got them in a little, my little library folder, and I get back to them whenever there's possible. And sometimes it's just like you're just replacing a bit of sky through a window, for example. It might not necessarily even be the whole thing.
How do you go about making that look realistic? Because obviously just placing the sky there is not going to work. It just look out of place almost. How do you go about making a sky through? Let's take the car shoot, where you can see the sky above, you can see the people in the car, but you can still see the sky through the windows. How do you go about replacing the sky behind the windows, if you know what I mean?
There's a lot of masking involved.
Mm.
And you mask a lot of stuff out. You need to make sure that you blur the sky. I mean, this is, again, is very essential to ensure that the depth of field is adhered to. In this particular car shot, actually, that was really in this particular photo. We shot the interior primarily, and you could see the sky through the windows. It was essential to blur that sky quite a bit because the depth of field was such that it was really focusing on the interior of the car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you would expect the sky in the background to be blurred out, and so it needed to be blurred. That's one thing, and it's just about getting the right blurring it to the right degree. If it's too blurry, that it's not going to look good. But if it's not blurred enough, then it's just not going to look realistic. And then the other thing is, of course, you got to remember what you're actually looking at in this instant is you're looking at a sky, but you're also looking through a window or windscreen. So you're looking through glass at the sky. So what you'd naturally have is reflections in the window. You would see some kind of reflections from the interior of the car, or whatever. And you got to make sure that you keep that you mask those reflections in. So there's a number of different blending modes in Photoshop that allow you to do that quite well. But if those reflections weren't there, then you wouldn't see that there's glass in the window, and then it wouldn't look realistic.
Yeah.
Because most windscreens have glass in them. You know what I mean? And so you would naturally expect some of those reflections to happen. When you put everything together and you build it back up like that, then it really helps to make it look like it's actually there. And the reflections make a massive, massive difference. That's really the kind of thing where you look at it and you think, yeah, it looks. That's what you expect.
Yeah. Cool, man. Love it.
Yeah. So what else have we got to talk about today? Well, I found something that made my heart jump a little bit. And I think we have to talk about it just as a fun fact type of a thing. Obviously, and quite clearly has something to do with Star Wars.
There we go. It's either going to be that or dogs.
That or dogs, yeah. I couldn't find anything related to dogs, unfortunately, this week. But I did find something Star Warsy. Now, Polaroid.
Remember them?
Remember them. So Polaroid have just announced a Mandalorian themed camera and instant film.
When you say Mandalorian themed, what does that entail? Is that just the casing that they've done something with, or is there something inside going on that?
Oh, right. Okay. Well, there is something inside going on.
Excellent.
So there's basically two things. There's the camera itself, which is the Polaroid. I think it's called Polaroid Now, and that has like a Mandalorian riding in the edging, it's like emblazoned on it, like some logo on it, whatever.
Okay.
It looks it actually does look cool. It looks cool enough that I really want one.
Brilliant.
Which is, I've been not arguing, but I've been having this conversation with my stepdaughter, like for the last 6 months, I think, because she started photography GCSE. So photography is now one of her major subjects at school. And she's been talking about, getting a Polaroid. And I kept saying to her, well, that's all well and good, but actually, if you really think about it, the films are really expensive, and so each photo is going to cost you quite a lot of money, blah blah. I don't know, it's fun, yeah. So I sort of appealed to her sense of reason, right? Which with a 16-year-old is not necessarily a given. But this thing, because it's a Star Wars Mandalorian camera, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, this might be quite cool.
So what's going on the internals that relates to the Mandalorian then? Is there anything else?
All right. Yeah. So basically, the camera is, Mandalorian branded. And it looks pretty cool. But they've also brought out a film, a color type film, that basically has little logos and like Baby Yoda and stuff, the logos on the actual photo when it comes out. So when you take a photo on a Polaroid, it comes out and it's got the kind of white framing around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's Star Wars branded. They call it a special collector's edition.
I see.
So they call it. So I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not too hot on the film. I probably, I don't care very much for the film bit.
No.
But the camera itself is actually pretty damn cool.
How much is it going to retail for?
Oh, well, in the US it's $120, and I think it's about $20 or something like that for the film.
Maybe £100, yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be probably around about that. The standard version of this camera is $100. It's $20 more expensive just for the Star Wars, just for the fact that it's a Star Wars sort of limited collector's edition. But
I'm going to say it's worth it.
It's a fun thing, and I've said this. I've said this before. Fuji make these instant printer things.
Mm-hmm.
And I like these for a particular purpose, because there are situations where you could just give somebody a business card, or you could just take a picture of them, a little portrait, and you could print it out on a thing. It looks like a Polaroid picture essentially, and you give them that with your business details, like a sticker or something on the back. That's a much more effective way of marketing. It's more fun. It's more creative. It's a clever thing. It will cost you a little bit more, but actually I think it'll be a lot more effective than just handing out a business card. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you're like an event, like if you do, like I'm just, from my perspective, I'm just thinking like at a conference, I work with a lot of AV teams, like audio video people, and very often you kind of shunt work towards each other that way. And just for somebody to have their portrait taken by me, like a fun picture, my details on the back, that's much more likely to go on the fridge than my business card.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And it keeps you top of mind, basically. Mm. So I think there could be a particular purpose for that. And that's, by the way, that's not, I didn't come up with this idea. I came across that at some point. I kind of thought, wow, this is freaking awesome. And I could use that basic idea of creating something bespoke and something in the moment, and something that's kind of fun and individual and personal in my on a photographic job, for what I do. So I thought that was a good idea. So I'm really quite on board with the whole instant picture thing, and I do think it's fun, and it's fun to have something physical in your hand and just to put them on the fridge, or have instant photos. So I'm actually quite on board. What is off-putting in a way is the cost of it. And if you think like a normal, like a standard Polaroid film, which is, I believe it's 8 images on it or something. I think that's something like $16 or something. that's like £2 per picture. So if you go on holiday and you're just snapping away in the way that we're now used to doing it, because we can take as many pictures as we want on our phones, that's expensive.
Man.
That's going to get very expensive very quickly, so it's not like that isn't the purpose of it.
No.
But the whole idea of taking a picture and it's immediately printing it out. And of course, there's also something about the way that Polaroids render the colors and they render the shadows. And of course, they don't really render them very well, but it has this sort of look, this Polaroid look, that makes it so attractive. It's an attractive thing to look at, and it's an attractive thing to hold in your hand. And everybody wants to shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Yeah.
Like everybody does, just for that purpose, just for that reason, it's probably worth getting that. So if I'd ever thought about getting a Polaroid camera, then now I'd be thinking about it even more.
Well, Christmas is coming up.
Well, and that's it is. It might be a possibility. I know. Yeah. My wife will tell me off if I just spend money on Polaroid cameras. I've been told in no uncertain terms.
Just because of a Mandalorian novelty.
Don't spend more money. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. So, but which is great because she doesn't actually watch or listen to this podcast. So,
we can say what we want.
Fine.
Good.
Good. But yeah, so Mandalorian themed Polaroid camera.
Just in time for season 2 in a few weeks.
Yes, perfect timing, of course. Yeah. They thought you might think they thought about this.
It's like they thought it through. Yeah, I just don't know how that happened.
Yeah, and also I went to our local camera store for the first time a couple of days ago, and actually on Monday, and they normally have some like secondhand Polaroids, and actually I think they've got some new Polaroids in the store, like in the shop window usually, and I always look at them like every time, like, oh, really cool, thinking about it and moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I went to the camera store for the first time again, and I hadn't been there since March, like since before the whole lockdown thing started. And that was a cool experience, because although it's a very different experience, like it really was very different. Everything is like shielded with Perplex, plastic, and you can't really browse in there. You can just walk in, you get a mask up, and sanitize your hands, whatever. You walk in and you're in this little area that they created with like these glass screens. And then if you can't really just go around and look at, like, I don't know, camera bags or tripods or SD cards or something, you just have to talk to somebody on the other side of the screen and they'll go and get it for you, sort of thing. And you can look at it behind it. So it's a very different shopping experience. But nevertheless, actually, it felt really quite good being in there, and seeing the guys that work there, because I've started to get to know some of them. And it's a weird thing, because of course you can order just about anything online nowadays. I've never ordered so many things off Amazon as I have over the last 6 months or something. But there's really something to be said for, small businesses or small shops and stuff like that. It's just a different experience, and I really quite enjoyed it. So. Although what I used to do in the past was, every time I was in town, I would just like go into the camera store and just browse, look around a little bit, just out of curiosity, not necessarily buy something. I sometimes just buy a little thing, and of course you can't do that, so that's a little bit depressing. They used to have what they called the wife chair in the back of the store. So guys would come in with their wives. The wives would be bored out of their brains. And then they'd have this little table and this little armchair area where the wives could just hang out and chill out, fall asleep, whilst the husbands were like rummage through the store.
Don't think you can get away with that today. God. The wife.
Yeah, no, it's totally cool. It's actually very, very, very much appreciated. My wife always she would, after much protest, I would talk her into like a quick trip a quick detour to the camera store, and then she would chill out in the back there. By the way, did you hear this noise?
Oh my God. It sounds like a pig.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a pig.
You know the dog spin when you find a pig under your chair.
That is the most awful sound.
Oh, well. On that note,
Cool.
I think we've come to the end of the Camera Shake podcast, episode 22.
Before we
Finishing
do
with a
go, we should announce next month's competition.
That's right, yes. So next month, we've got another photo competition coming up.
Mhm.
This time, what is it going to be this time?
This time, it's going to be, given that we've been doing a lot of car photography ourselves recently, obviously a very specific style, this time we're going to open it up to automotive photography. So,
Yes, because we want to see your cars.
Exactly.
See.
We're not saying you have to go light paint or anything like that, but, photo of your car, other cars, might be long exposure on the motorway or whatever it might be, motorbikes, anything like that. Anything automotive, we want to see it. And
and it could be cars in motion. It could be just like cool shots of cars. Could be details of cars. Whatever. As long as it's automotive, send your photos in, and you can send them into us by email. That would be camerashakepodcast@gmail.com, or you could just head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/camerashakepodcast, and send us your images there. Any which way you want to do that, you could tie them to the back of a dolphin and send that over here, or whatever. So that would be awesome to see as many photos as possible.
Absolutely. And the closing date for this one is going to be 4 weeks from today, assuming this episode does go out today. But the closing date will be the Thursday, the 22nd of October, where we will announce the winner the following week on the 29th of October.
Exactly. So make sure you either start taking pictures, or if you've already, if you get some awesome car photos, then send them over. I'm kind of hoping that Dave Cox or Dan are going to send us some pictures, because I know they've got some incredible car pictures.
Yeah. I'm not sure we should allow them. They're too good.
Yeah. All right. So the other thing, very important, please leave us a review, give us a star rating on Apple Podcasts or any podcast platform, and of course head over to YouTube if you haven't done so already, and give us a follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That'd be fantastic. All you've got to do is type Camera Shake Podcast in the search bar. It's going to take you straight there. It always helps the channel if you subscribe and if you like, and all the rest of it. It just helps us to be seen and to be heard by more people. That'd be phenomenal. And likewise, on Apple Podcast, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of your screen, you can leave a review. We've had a great review, by the way. We had our first review.
We did have our first review this week, didn't we?
Yeah,
on Apple Podcasts.
We did.
It was a great review. Loved it.
It was a really great review. And that just made me remember that everybody should be doing that, because just like on other platforms, on Apple Podcast, of course, if that is the way that you're listening to this podcast, it really makes a big difference to the show. The more ratings you have, and the more reviews you have, the easier it is for people to find the podcast itself. So if you think that's a good idea, then please help us out and leave us a nice star rating and a nice review. We're really appreciating that, especially if you live in Maryville, Tennessee. Come on. Right, so that's all from us today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be seeing you again next Thursday.
Indeed. See you then.
Bye. See you then. Bye for now.